Michelle Peoples is coming to show us her sporting underwear, or underpinnings as is properly called. The ribbon corset is made of ribbon as opposed to fabric. In 1901, a simple pattern of silk, ribbon, and 2 bones and a busk was available, allowing women to construct their own ribbon corsets. A suedo ribbon corset looks like a ribbon corset but is made from cut cloth instead of ribbons. The outside seam of the cut cloth is sewn fine, while the tight inside seam is sewn plain and curved. A shorter corset defines a waist but also offers better back support, and some actually serve as a fashionable alternative to certain kinds of medical braces. These styles include French underbust and longline underbust. Michelle's corset is made with red grosgrain 3-inch wide and 2 1/4 wide black floral brocade for contrast. Under her corset, Michelle is wearing what is called a combination, made with white cotton and accented with red, white, and black lace on the sleeves and legs. This pattern is from truly Victorian, and it's an 1893 combination pattern. By the late 1870s, knickers were acceptable and widely worn by women. Although an item of underwear, they were never referred to in the polite conversation. It was almost as if they did not exist. This style of knickers was fashionable underwear until the turn of the 20th century, when the style lacked daintiness. From 1877 onwards, the popular Victorian drawers had a new competition from these combination outfits. This all-in-one garment consisted of a camisole bodice attached to the drawers, so it's like a onesie. A onesie. Its design eliminated the need for a chemise, and the later versions of the combinations were frillier and prettier garments that merged into lingerie, making them more exotic in their appearance. Combinations were initially made from linen, silk, merino, calico, or cambric in flesh pink tones or cream colors. The combinations were made more popular as a style in the late 1880s and were made of fine wool. By 1892, other variations made of silk or fine muslins were the preferred fabrics. Thank you, Michelle. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Melinda is wearing a Victorian caroling costume. Victorians didn't invent Christmas, but they did revive the custom of caroling door to door. A significant collection of carols was published in 1833, leading to a revival of medieval carols, as well as popularizing newer classics such as Hark the Herald Angels Sing, Joy to the World, Silent Night. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol in 1843 emphasized the Victorian focus on family, gaiety, and charity. Prince Albert brought many German customs to England, including the Christmas tree. In 1848, engraving from Illustrated London News showed tranquil Queen Victoria and her large, loving families before a roaring fireplace, surrounded by sweets, decorations, and gifts. Melinda is gaily attired in brown silk dupioni, trimmed with deep green velveteen, white gimp, burgundy tasseled trim, and white fringe. At her throat is a crocheted cream lace collar, and bright brass buttons close the 8-paneled bodice, which ends in a figure flattering point. Charming pagoda sleeves open around the cuffs of her cream-colored cotton Garibaldi blouse. A black crocheted snood keeps her hair nice and tidy beneath the burgundy edge green cotton of her bonnet skirting. The body of the bonnet is lined with pleated black satin, trimmed with 2 rows of lace, and covered in the same deep green velveteen as her gown trim. Silk flowers, velveteen leaves, gewgaws, and feathers in white and burgundy bedeck the bonnet inside and out, artfully arranged in an asymmetrical cluster to flatter the face. The bonnet ties with a burgundy satin ribbon. White kid gloves protect the hands, and a fur demi-cape keeps out the winter chill. And speaking of winter's chill, what better way to foil the snows of Old Man Winter than with tweed wool spats embroidered with burgundy seed beads, and she made those herself. Long before recorded music, sharing carols with neighbors was both a gift and a ladylike way to celebrate the holidays. As George McFerrin once wrote, "Let's dance and sing and make good cheer, for Christmas comes but once a year." Thank you, Melinda. Shelley is wearing a Victorian pianist gown. Music was a favorite form of indoor recreation in Victorian times, with many a young lady expected to perform at social gatherings and functions. The piano was an emblem of social status. Among women, the piano was one of the few areas where a woman could express and distinguish herself. The Victorians delighted in making music themselves. Thousands of songs and piano pieces in styles ranging from classics to popular and to comic music was composed and published for the amateur market, with pianos becoming more affordable for the middle class as time went on. The Victorian age is associated with musical evenings, and no house was complete without a piano, whether a grand piano in the drawing room or an upright in the parlor. Shelley is wearing a gown she made of silk, a big, brightly colored plaid pattern which was popular in the 1860s, worn over a cage crinoline. In fashion from 1858 until 1865. Notice how the plaid patterns line up, even though the skirt and bodice are two separate pieces. The skirt has knife pleats in the front and is cartridge pleated in the back. Yes, each one of those is caught to the waistband by a hand stitch. It takes about 5 yards of fabric and 5 hours of time to cartridge pleat a skirt of this size. Notice the hem protector tape at the very bottom, which would keep the end from fraying as it sweeps the ground. The bodice has a deep V in the front, which necessitates a shimmy set, which is like a dicky underneath. Notice how the uneven plaid matches up on both sides of the bodice. This is done with very careful planning and cutting and extra fabric in case it doesn't come out just right the first time. Ribbon bows add pretty accents, which were popular in the era. The huge sleeves, called pagoda sleeves, are cut on the bias and have what are called sleeve jockeys, accenting the top of the sleeve. The white cotton undersleeves are buttoned inside to the bodice sleeves. They would be removed to be laundered, as the gown was rarely washed. In this era, the fashionable sleeve lining was cut very low down the arm. A lady then couldn't lift her arms very high, making her look rather helpless. Desirable trait in the mid-19th century. But she could play the piano. You were probably wondering just how she could tame all those hoop skirts to sit on a piano stool. Well, just watch her. Shelley Peters is a Civil War reenactor and the proprietress of the Kansas Mercantile, which you can find downstairs in the bazaar. She takes on custom sewing, with historical, comfortable corsets being her specialty, and she teaches sewing workshops in historical sewing methods and corset making. And she does indeed play the piano for her church and sings with the Inland Master Choral. Thank you, Shelley. We had a slight change in the program. Our dear Lisa met with a little accident with a penny farthing yesterday. But Karina Montgomery has graciously stepped in and will be modeling her Victorian swimwear. So here comes Karina. Changes took place in society as people became more affluent, more mobile, and had more leisure time. People flocked to seaside resorts by the thousands. A trip to the seaside was exciting as there were so many things to do. Sandy beaches, tide pools, bathing, donkey rides, and in later years, amusement parks with Ferris wheels and sideshows along the boardwalk. Karina is wearing a typical Victorian women's swimsuit. consisting of a tunic-style dress, knickers, hat, and belt, all in red cotton with white trim. The suit was custom made by Alyssa Wright of Hourglass Designs. She's also wearing red and white striped knee socks, which she embellished with white ruffles. And she's carrying a red pagoda-style parasol, which was purchased from one of our Gaslight gathering vendors. In the Victorian era, the bathing machine was part of sea bathing etiquette, more rigorously enforced upon women than men, but to be observed by both sexes among those who wished to be proper. Men and women were usually segregated, so nobody of the opposite sex might catch sight of them in their bathing suits, which were not considered proper clothing. Karina might hire a bathing machine to preserve her modesty. These were roofed and walled carts which rolled into the sea. Once in the water, she would open the door, step into the sea, get wet, run back in, and be completely hidden from the view of the people on the shore. When done bathing, she would step back inside, raise the flag, signaling the driver to haul her back up the beach. Thank you, Karina. Next, we have Amy McCain in an Edwardian naturalist dress. Birding began as a Victorian-era hobby. The Audubon Society, Field Guide for Birds, and current ornithology owe their wings to 19th and early 20th century naturalists. Birdwatching is a pastime old as the swallow's sky. A classification system, Darwin's theories about species, and increased leisure for the middle class combined to produce a wave of enthusiasm for nature studies. By the early 1900s, women naturalists traveled and wrote extensively about the habits of North American birds. Birding might mean a quiet morning spent on a nature reserve with a field guide and binoculars in hand, or a naturalist might visit the nearest aviary several times each year and sketch or watercolor their observations. Books such as The Nature Notes of an Edwardian Lady by Edith Holden were written with a month-to-month observation of bird sightings and flora and fauna. Edith writes on May 4th, 1905, "The cockbird keeps sentinel over the top of the dead first. After a short time they flew away, and I soon discovered the nest in the thickest part of a wind bush. Saw a green woodpecker on the bank of a railway cutting, looking for ants' nest, I expect, and heard the cuckoo for the first time this year." Amy is wearing a simple Edwardian outfit of a white skirt and shirtwaist made from cotton dotted Swiss. To protect her from the elements, she wears a black woolen capelet and a black straw hat. She carries her naturalist journal for nature sketches and watercolors, as well as binoculars for field studies. It's gone. Almost. Thank you, Amy.